And this one is about a serial killer, and I realize I'm like wearing an outfit that matches this book cover, which was not my intent. If there was ever a question of like, is there such a thing as too many perspectives in a book? For me, the answer is yes. And he's like, new phone, who's this? What? I'm what? I haven't talked to my sister in like 5 years. And August is Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. Today we're going to talk about all the books I read in July, and I'm actually going to break this up into 2 videos. Not because I read a ton, I read 9 books, but because I'm trying to avoid the 30-minute video and I have a lot to say as always. So let's dive into part 1 of what I read in July. All in, I had a really good reading month and I'm very excited about so many of these books. I'm looking down because I'm looking at so many of these books. I did, however, have 2 DNFs. So one was a soft DNF, which, I mean, I'm going to go back to it when the time feels right. And the other was a hard DNF, which means I will never ever pick up that book again. And I will probably only ever talk about it now. So we're just gonna get the big old DNF out of the way. And it was All Girls by Emily Layden. And I am so disappointed that this didn't work for me because I really had high hopes for this book and it had such good potential, but I just couldn't. So it's like prep school vibes, mystery in the past, mystery in the present. It is multiple POVs. It was plugged by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It was an all-girls school, so it was like that twisted female friendship thing, and it just seemed so perfect. Ugh. I struggled with it, and here's why. So, and I'm going to read a little bit from the description of it. So I got it from my library, which is why I don't have it. So this story follows 9 young women as they navigate their ambitions and fears at a prestigious New England prep school, all pitched against the backdrop of a scandal the administration wants silenced. So it's like one of the girls is driving up to the school and there's all these signs that are basically accusing one of the teachers of having assaulted a former student. And the school is accused of having buried this story, which happened 10 or 20 years in the past. I am unclear because I DNF'd the book, so I don't remember. But part of the problem with this book is, yes, it follows 9 young women, and every chapter is a different person's perspective. And when I tell you, I couldn't remember who was who or what was what, it was too much. Like if there was ever a question of like, is there such a thing as too many perspectives in a book? For me, the answer is yes. I was so lost. I was so lost. I made it 50% into it and I just had to throw in the towel. And I'm bummed, but at the same time, it happens. So, sounded good on paper, didn't execute for me, and I moved on. So my soft DNF of the month is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, you saw that I was commuting back into the city for a little bit and I brought this book with me because perfect book to be reading on a train. Might have had, you know, a did it for the gram moment, but I made it very far into the book. I think I'm like halfway in, page 216. And I loved Red, White, and Royal Blue. I don't not love this, but it just is not, / was not pulling me back in. I DNF'd this a little while ago. I DNF'd this a couple weeks ago. It was not a book that when it came to reading at the end of the day, or even like when I was on the train, I just found my mind drifting. And I don't know if part of it is just, there was so much on my mind for work, and being back in the commute and stuff obviously was just a challenge in and of itself for all the obvious reasons. But I just was not pulled into the story, and I'm optimistic that I will be, but I think part of my challenge with this book is I almost feel like there's too much given away on the back of the book, and what they tell you on the back of the book took like over 100 pages to happen. So like I knew something was going to happen and it was like, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, and I was getting impatient. So I am going to go back to it. Like I said, I really enjoy Casey McQuiston's writing. I loved Red, White, and Royal Blue. My camera is currently sitting on Red, White, and Royal Blue to prop you guys up a little bit more. So soft DNF for sure. Have not given up on this book, but I do very much believe there's a time and a place for books, and this is just not my time for this story, even though I realize I'm like wearing an outfit that matches this book cover, which was not my intent. But I will get back to this one for sure. So this is a girl named August. She moves to New York City. It's found family. And she basically starts to have this subway crush on this girl she sees on the train every morning. And there's just all sorts of things going on with that girl. So it's an interesting story. I'm very interested in seeing where it goes. And when I do, I will let you guys know. Okay, now let's dive into books that I actually finished and read. And the first one I want to talk about, these are in no particular order other than the way they are stacked on my floor right now, is I read The Nothing Man by Catherine Ryan Howard. And again, if you guys have been following me for a while, I bought this months ago in one of my, when I was like, oh, I've got like $700 of books in my shopping carts, help me pick a book. And this is one of the books you guys helped me pick. And then I just put it aside for no good reason, but this was so good. This is my first Catherine Ryan Howard, and I am hooked, you guys. I am hooked on her. So this is about a woman named Eve, and when she was younger, her family was murdered by a serial killer who was known as the Nothing Man. And the police dubbed him that because they knew nothing about him, and he was never caught. So Eve survived the attack on her family, and many years later as an adult, she is still understandably grappling with the post-traumatic stress of having lost her entire family and having been a victim of this serial killer. And she writes a book. She writes a true crime story, and her mission is to figure out what happened, because her family was one of many families that was impacted by this person. And she's hoping by putting this book out, she can sort of rattle some cages, shake out some memories from people, and she starts to investigate what happened. And the hitch is, as we know from page 1, is there's this guy Jim who's a security guard, and he's at the store where he works, and he's hearing all the buzz about this book, and he picks it up and he's like, what's this about? And he's like, oh man, this is about me. Crap. So we get a book within a book. This is total Golden State Killer vibes, which she talks about in the acknowledgement section. And it's like cat and mouse, and it pieces together everything that happened in the past. And I just loved the writing. I loved the story. I loved Eve. I loved like the, oh God, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? I was like tense and I was in it, and I love this book. Loved it. I just thought it was such a brilliant idea for a book too. And if you guys are on the fence about her or have not picked up a Catherine Ryan Howard, may I suggest you start here, because it's the only one I've read. But it was just so good. Loved it. Another book that I totally loved is Bathhouse by PJ Vernon. And I just got so pulled into this from page 1. This is one of those books that 100% like grabbed me from the start and never let go. And I, again, like compulsively was reading it. There's lots of dog earing in it. And I feel like everybody was talking about this book, and it wasn't even like I had FOMO because it was on my radar already, but I was like, I need to read it immediately because I don't want to be spoiled for it. And also I want to like understand what everyone's talking about and why there's so much hype. And I think the hype is very well deserved on this one. So this is about Nathan and Oliver, and they have been in a relationship for 5 years. They're not married, but they've been together for 5 years. And Oliver is a recovering addict and Nathan is a doctor, and they live in DC together. And they have like the picture perfect relationship in so many ways. Everything seems to be perfect on the surface. They are happy, they are together, they have this great life, they have this beautiful house that they live in. But Oliver's just like a little bit itching for like a little bit of excitement. Like he just kind of can't help himself. So when the book opens, Nathan is in New York at a conference, and Oliver decides he's just gonna go to the bathhouse. Just kind of check it out. Just kind of see what's going on. Maybe meet a guy. He knows he shouldn't be doing it. He knows he shouldn't go, but he just can't resist this temptation. And Oliver goes, and he barely escapes the bathhouse with his life. So he meets a man, he goes in a room with him, and he gets attacked, and he basically runs for his life. And he not only has physical signs of having been attacked, but he has the trauma of having been attacked, but he can't tell Nathan what happened. So he begins to spin a lie to cover up this story, and it just goes from there. And I was again, I was like tense, edge of my seat, what was gonna happen next, lots of twists and turns, multiple points of view. I was hooked. I was totally hooked. I loved where this book went. This definitely also falls into the dark and messed up people doing dark and messed up things category. And I loved it. I totally did. I can't wait to read PJ Vernon's first book. I already bought it. I know I owe you guys a book haul, When You Find Me. It was his first book, so I picked that one up. I'm really excited to read it, but I loved this. And the cover is just, I'm realizing I'm like, I never wear pink, and why am I like pink lady today? So good. So good. I also finally read a book that I feel like everybody else in the universe had read but me, and it was Beach Read by Emily Henry. So I talked about this in my summer vibes video, and I was particularly saving this for this summer because Beach Read. And whether or not you read it in the summer or the fall or the winter, you're good to go. I loved this too. See, I'm telling you guys, I had such a good reading month. This was my first book back on the train, and I just fell 100% in love. I get it. I get it. I get it. And this is about two writers, and they wind up staying in beach houses next to each other. They both have incredible cases of writer's block. So in this book, Augustus is like this literary fiction, like best-selling author. In January writes romance novels, also very successful, but they are both just struck down with a massive case of writer's block. They're both under deadline. They both need to write a book, and they are polar opposites in all the ways. And one night they sort of crack this deal that it's like, all right, you write my genre, I'll write your genre. And they're just trying to hopefully get out of their creative ruts. And they sort of teach each other about each other's genres. And it's just like, it's so good. And they both have backstories, and there's baggage, and there's reasons why they're both at these beach houses, and they have complicated pasts. And it's definitely like hate to love. And I loved the banter between them. I loved all the writing stuff, obviously. I cried. I completely understand why everybody talks about how great this book is. I loved it. And it reminds me of Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren, not in story, but in a way where you've got this great relationship between people and this great connection. And I just fell in love with the writing and the story of it. And I just thought this was so tremendous. So I also picked up People You Meet on Vacation. The book haul is going to be big, you guys. And I'm excited to read that one too. And I just think she's great. So I highly recommend it. If you are the other person who hasn't read this book yet, pick it up for sure, because it's great. It was such a fast read because I was so into it. Dog-eared in all the ways. Sign of a great book. So after I read Malibu Rising last month, I was itching for like a little bit more McReva. I didn't have enough of him. I wanted to go back to his origin story, even though we kind of get his origin story in Malibu Rising, but where we first met him. So I did a reread of The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And I actually did this on audiobook this time around. I had physically read it the first time. And this was like a no-brainer, 5 stars again. I remembered so much of this book. I cried again. I was reminded why, this being the first Taylor Jenkins Reid that I read, like why it completely like triggered me into reading everything she ever wrote ever, and why she's one of my most favorite authors. I just love this book. I think it's so well done. I definitely picked up more the second time around, as you're apt to do when you know what's coming, and just still consistently amazed by her writing and her research and how this still feels so real. And I know it's not. I know Evelyn is not a real person, but she still feels like such a real person to me. And just how the story was woven together, and the commentary about women and about the times and Hollywood, and how this feels so authentically real to me. I just loved it. It's such a brilliant book. I think she's just such an amazing writer, and I love seeing how she's grown in her career and tried different story structures, and how her stories have evolved and how her writing has evolved. And I just think she's great. I just absolutely do. So whether you read it or listen to it on audio, I think you can't go wrong either way. There's multiple narrators on the audiobook, and it's just so well done. So so good. It's so good. And I wound up listening to this after All Girls when I needed a major pick-me-up. And, you know, we talk about like palate cleanser books and things like that. And I knew this was going to just get me into the better place that I needed to be in. And it did everything I wanted it to. And I also got my little Mick fix, if you will. So it's fun to go back. So the next mission is to find him in Daisy Jones and the Six. But for now, I did Evelyn Hugo, and still one of my favorite books, still. So that's it for part 1. Let me know if you guys have read any of these books and what you think of them. And then stay tuned for part 2, because spoiler alert, I filmed it today. I'm just gonna break it up into 2 separate videos. And I will see you guys in that video really soon. So thanks for hanging out today, and I hope you guys have a great one. Bye.